It is the Anfield Wrap after Liverpool have gone to Southampton and won by 3-2. And my God, there's a lot to talk about. I'm joined by ESPN's Beth Lindop, I'm joined by Mo Stewart and by Mark Jones in order to go through, ultimately, Mo Salah, Southampton, Real Madrid. We've got Si Hughes with an insert about his book on Mo Salah, which, my God, he's timed his run there perfectly. Si Hughes, fair play to him. That's to come as well. It's a very, very, very packed show for the Anfield Wrap today, but we are here in association with Peloton. Peloton are the official digital fitness partner of Liverpool FC. And you can find your push, find your power with £500 off a selected Peloton Bike Plus and Tread package at onepeloton.co.uk. That offer ends on the 9th of December. You need an internet connection and Peloton all-access membership at £39 a month. Terms apply, and you can go from there, onepeloton.co.uk, to see them and to see everything that's on offer all the way through. There's loads of LFC stuff on the Peloton, which is obviously because they are an official digital partner of Liverpool Football Club all the way through the season, and we've been using it a lot here at the Anfield Wrap in the last week or so, and enjoying it massively. I had a little cycle through the Bosnian countryside on a Peloton last week at one point. I don't know quite why I chose Bosnia. Soundtrack by their pop mix.
Probably should have been somewhere that wasn't snowing as well.
Well, yeah, you'd have thought, yeah, but no, that was me. Rattled through the Bosnian and Herzegovinian countryside. It said it was a coastal road, which makes you think that actually Bosnia and Herzegovina might actually be quite similar to Liverpool, where you can get trees and beach very close together. But anyway, let's find out. So very kind of Peloton to do all of that, and let's get stuck in. We are going to have to start off with the contract stuff, Beth. Salah's made his point absolutely crystal clear, yet again made the point that he wants to stay, being emphatic that he has not been offered anything yet. There might be some sophistry there, but I prefer to take it at face value, and at the moment Mo Salah at least is of the view that Liverpool don't want him to stay for another year or two or three, and Mo Salah wants to stay at Liverpool.
He does, and I think for me that is the biggest takeaway. I think, we've heard on the grapevine that he does want to stay. That has been clear for quite some time, but I think you hear what he said yesterday, and it was just completely unequivocal. I think that the line that stuck out to me most, actually, in what he said yesterday was, "There's no club like this one," and to me that just encapsulated what Liverpool means to Mo Salah and how keen Mo Salah is to stay. In one sense, I almost don't think we've learned anything new. We have, in the sense that we know that a deal obviously isn't near. I think it's worth noting that him saying he's not been offered a new contract doesn't mean that negotiations aren't ongoing. They very much are. It's obviously that the club have...
So you think they very much are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they are. I think the club obviously haven't tabled an official offer as of yet. I think there's definitely been contact there with him and with his agent. It's obviously not been to the extent that he would like. I think a lot of fans would like there to be a blank check on the table and Salah puts what he wants. Obviously it's not going to be that straightforward. It does sound like they are quite a way off in terms of what they want from what Salah has said yesterday. It's such a tough one. I think the club, obviously we know Richard Hughes inherited a really, really difficult situation, but now obviously, less than 2 months out from Salah and from Van Dijk and Trent as well, being able to talk to clubs overseas, it is a really sort of desperate situation for Liverpool. And I think yesterday it sort of backed up Salah's argument. I think that he is worthy of whatever deal that he sees fit.
Mark, I want to be careful on... There's one thing I'm sorry, we're not going to be careful, quite the opposite. I don't care about the January the 1st thing. In that, do we really believe, for instance, let's use a different player, for instance, do we really believe that Real Madrid have not been in contact with Trent Alexander-Arnold or his people? And also, I'm not cross about that. I don't think it's breaking the rules. I'm not going to get on a high horse in any direction, because when Liverpool are talking to players, it would be ridiculous. So I think that the 1st of January thing is a little bit of a misnomer in amongst all of this. But that's about the only one I'm falling back on here. Everything else, I'm of the view, Liverpool have got themselves into this situation. There is the savage reality that the only person who will speak publicly on the record from Liverpool's point of view will be Arne Slot, and he will be asked about this in his Real Madrid press conference, and then he will be asked about it in his Man City press conference, and then he will be asked about it in his Newcastle press conference. So you're in this situation where Mo Salah can say what he wants, because it's not going to be rebutted by Arne Slot, and Liverpool the people who run Liverpool and the people who own Liverpool are left very much on the back foot and will look like fools, I think, now, if at the end of this process Salah is saying, well, no one's ever made me an offer and now I'm going to the club of my choice.
Yeah, I think what Salah's done here, it's a message. It's a huge message. He's taken it upon himself. We know how these things work. You know, if anyone's seen him in things like mixed zones, things, he doesn't often talk to the press. He doesn't do these interviews. He's made this happen. He's walked through St Mary's and he's seen the likes of James Pearce and Gorsty and people like that, and he's gone, I'm going to get this out there. Because, and it was the same at Old Trafford, wasn't it? After the 3-0, I feel like he's on a bit of a tour. He's done the Sky Sports. He's done the local patch. Maybe he'll do some interview overseas next. And
just come on here.
Yeah, get him on.
He'd be more than welcome.
he's taking his opportunity to put it out there, and it's unequivocal. I think best spot on in terms of what he said. It couldn't be any clearer to me in terms of what he wants. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. He wants to be here. Everyone wants him here. And, well, everyone outside the club wants him here, but you have to, I mean, in terms of player power, I think we're seeing it in action here, because Mo Salah has taken the opportunity on the day when he's on the back page of all the papers with his top off to just come out and say this. And he's on the back page of the papers tomorrow because he said this now and it's all going to be out there again. Mo Salah is such a symbol of this club and this city, and he's just gone and won that game, a huge 3 points, and he's putting that out there. I mean, it's a real... He's a clever bloke, let's put it that way, isn't he? He's a clever bloke, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And as you say, I think it's getting to the point now where the club are at risk of looking a bit daft if things don't progress as Mo Salah wants it to.
So, at the risk of sounding like an idiot, and at the risk of having everybody watching this start shouting at me and throwing shit at me, Mo Salah's using us. Like, I mean, I would if I was in his situation, don't get me wrong. But he is using us. Like, the deck is massively stacked in his favour because of what Mark just said about how he's playing right now. 2/3 of Liverpool's goals this season have come from Mo Salah. So he's like, well, right now, there is no one more important than me, so I'm going to do this. And so, yeah, I understand him, but the whole we haven't offered him a contract yet thing, what that doesn't necessarily say is that the club don't know what he wants. And we don't know what he wants. This is the key thing to me, right? In all of the pay him whatever he wants stuff, we don't know what that is. Like, we don't know if he was asking for 5 years. We don't know if he's asking for 2 million quid. Like, there is a limit to pay him to whatever he wants. And we can't make hard, fast conclusions about how this negotiation is going with such little hard information. And he knows that. But he also knows the emotional connection to it. I agree with what Beth says. I think it's positive the fact that he wants to stay. But let's test that. Because essentially, if he wants to stay, it sounds like he's going to need to compromise as well. Maybe not on everything. Maybe on going from 4 years to 3 years, or 4 years to 3 years and an option. But there has to be some kind of meeting in the middle here. So at the moment, obviously, it looks like the club are not doing what they're supposed to do and everybody's putting the pressure on them. And again, I have to say, if I was in his position, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. But we have to be realistic about this. The idea that the club are just linking, well, it's not that important. It's not really matter. We won't bother to put a contract out there for him. That's rubbish. It's ludicrous. What's happening is that the club knows what he wants. The club, for whatever reason, don't want to give him what he wants and are waiting until maybe he gets closer to the point and starts to maybe walk that back a tiny bit. Again, I don't know, but that would be my reading of the situation is.
Do you feel as though that the three of them... I think you can possibly still sort of put Van Dijk off to one side, but let's be clear about this. There is an amount of money that Liverpool Football Club will want to spend every year on wages.
Yes.
That's also capped in relation to turnover by cost controls put in place by UEFA moving forward, and we work the Premier League one out sort of later on around that because they're probably going to change that rule to be in line with UEFA. So all of this, there is a fine, whether you like it or not. If you want to play within the rules, there is a finite amount of money.
Exactly.
If you want to play within the rules that Liverpool therefore have to spend on their football related costs, and then by an extension of that, this much for transfers, this much for wages, and there'll be wiggle room between the two. Do you feel as though there's a relationship here between what's going to happen with Trent Alexander-Arnold and what's going to happen with Mo Salah and what's going to happen with Virgil van Dijk? For me, I think the Van Dijk one is the bottom of that list in terms of how they can all intersect.
Absolutely.
But I do wonder whether or not within the context of talking about any... Like, ultimately, is one of the things that's holding Liverpool up, is they almost need Trent Alexander-Arnold to make a decision, because it seems crystal clear Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk want to stay. That still seems like the one where you can certainly have a conversation from what's in the public domain.
Agree. And I think if there was only one of them, even if there was only two of them in this situation, then we'd have probably got it done by now. The fact that there's three of them, and to a certain extent, I think both Salah and Trent are waiting to see what the other one does or gets before they kind of go hard and fast over, well, this is my non-negotiable. And I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever explained the whole FFP thing to them, but they probably don't really care, to be honest.
No, I mean, they can choose not to.
Yeah.
And also, I've talked about playing within the rules, and it might be that they're both in a position to talk to either organisations that don't have to adhere to those rules, or who don't want to play within those, or choose not to play within those rules.
Yeah, and there are so many other elements to this. So there are so many other ways that Liverpool can get to the number that they want, whether it's through bonuses, image rights. I mean, if you listen to some alleged sources, you'll say that Salah's actual take home on a weekly basis is much higher than his reported wage.
Psych User's book is one of those.
Exactly. So there are ways that it can all be managed, and I believe those are what the negotiations are right now, trying to manage them all. But I think it's fascinating, the idea that that Salah is so willing and open to make the club the bad guys. And also, you mentioned about Arne Slot being asked about it. I wonder how he feels about what Salah's just said, because he's probably like, mate, you're not making my job any easier here.
Yeah, I think it's quite a unique thing that Salah has done, first of all for him, because as Mark said, I think he's someone who chooses when he speaks very, very carefully, doesn't do it very, very often. We know he did, even going back to that West Ham game toward the back end of last season, where he walked past the mix zone and he told reporters, if I speak there will be fire. He knew exactly what he was doing with that comment as well. Everything he does is super calculated, so it is a unique situation to put the club in. But also for Liverpool certainly under Jurgen Klopp have never been a club where the player power has become an issue, where players have too often put the club in a difficult position. So, I can understand as well some people maybe being a little bit, not frustrated at Salah, but being surprised maybe at the way that he's handled this. But I do agree, I think all three contracts are intrinsically linked, and I think it's hard because I think all three of the players who are out of contract have an argument to be Liverpool's most important player. I think all three of them, for various reasons, could argue that they deserve to be the highest paid player. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold obviously is the one who is entering the peak of his career, who you would imagine would be angling for the longest contract. Therefore, you would imagine he'd maybe want to be the highest paid. Mo Salah obviously already is the highest paid, so at the form he's in now, he could argue he doesn't need to take a pay cut. And then Virgil van Dijk's thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm the club captain. I'm a similar age to Mo. If he's getting this, then why aren't I? So it's such a difficult position. But obviously, time is ticking now, and Liverpool can't afford for these players to sort of play hardball until, February, March time, especially, hopefully Liverpool are going to be going deep into a title race. They don't want this dragging on until the new year. Arne Slot doesn't want to be answering questions about this every week, and he's been very good so far. I think he's been very guarded. He's not been drawn into contract stuff, and I don't think he ever will be. But when players are coming out and saying things like this, it makes his life a lot harder.
I think Slot has reacted to every contract question in this very, he bats it away. But that's because things go well. If let's say there are a couple of bad results down the line, it's going to be a title challenge. Things do go wrong. There are bumps in the road. You don't want him asking it. You don't want him to have to answer that again and again and again constantly. Every game it's coming up again. There's a part of me that tries to look at it from the club side, which obviously we all know we all want the deal to be done. But you look at it from the club side. If you challenge Mo Salah to go and earn it, he's going to go and try and earn it. He's going to go out there. He's going to.
But is there a point where that ceases to
exactly, be? That's the thing, and how it feels like it's on a knife edge a little bit. And as I say, there could be a result down the line which throws everything up in the air a little bit, and then all it's going to take is maybe he gets subbed or something happens, and he gives one of his reactions to being taken off. So it's kind of playing with fire. But as I say, there's a part of me which goes, if you tell Mo Salah to go and do something, he is going to go and do it, and he is going to go and prove this incredible footballer that he is. And my thing with them not offering the deal is I'm sure there are these, all the stuff they look at, all the stats they look at, all the stuff that's on Mike Leveridge's laptop, all of that sort of stuff. I'm sure there are numbers there that show he is down on everything. I know you're into that, perhaps a bit more than me, but I'm sure there are that. But then you just look at the impact that he has on the game, the impact he has what is now going to be a title race, which he's been there and done before. You can't quantify that, and you have to make him feel welcome, have to make him feel like he's valued, which is what he's come out and suggested today that he isn't. So it's getting to a point where they're playing with fire a bit, and in a way they're fortunate that it's going the way it is at the moment, but because you can think of many other examples at many other clubs where toys would be out the pram by now.
Other thing I would point out on the intrinsically linked point is that I think there'll be new deals for Diaz and Konate in the near future as well, or at least attempts to do them, and that then throws into where it is that you benchmarked other people. Nobody says it's easy, but nobody made Richard Hughes take the job.
Everything the Anfield Wrap does this week is free. Every show, audio or video, we are putting out so you can get a good taste of the flavour of the Anfield Wrap as this season heats up. Obviously we're doing that because we want you to subscribe, so if you've done that in the past and you're thinking about coming back to us, then now would be a great time. And if you have never done it before, then also think about it now as well. We're approaching December, it's the crunch time of the campaign. It is the Anfield Wrap, therefore your pre-match, during the match, post-match, we've got you covered. Enjoy the week.
Let's move on and talk about Southampton 2, Liverpool 3. Mark, Liverpool very much tested the maxim. I don't care how they win, just have them win before this one. They put us all through the mill. For me, it's a game that's entirely defined by the reaction of both sets of players to goals. I think Liverpool, to me, verged on unprofessional at 1-0. Genuinely, I thought that they were absolutely abysmal from 1-0 to 1-1. That said, I thought they were absolutely tremendous after it went 2-1 to Southampton. So you can give with one hand, you can take with the other. Liverpool got the points in the end, and I think Carragher on commentary said when it went 2-1, and you can't say Southampton don't deserve it, but you could certainly say Liverpool deserved to be behind. But by the time Liverpool win the game, for me, you can't say Liverpool didn't deserve it.
Absolutely. The reactions going 2-1 was, I think, the most impressive thing about the game when you consider everything that went on before it. It felt like they got there and it was wet and cold and horrible, and they decided, it's going to be one of those today, and they just didn't really, apart from the start to go 1-0 up, as you say, to then go into that, and it's been a problem all season, that sort of thing, to take the lead and then not kick on, to let Southampton back in the game as they did, was unprofessional, as you say, but I felt when the Fernandes goal goes in, I think it was 56, was it?
Yeah.
I just thought there's so long left here. There is so long left, and if they just get it right. And I think, is it about 5 minutes later is when Núñez gets in and plays it across to Diaz, and that's, this will happen again. They just needed to keep their heads. They needed to be professional to gain the professionalism they didn't have before, and they were going to get it right. It's a game that we've perhaps not seen the likes of this season, which perhaps it's a little bit of a shock. It's perhaps takes you back to the last few seasons, that sort of game where they get in one a bit. They didn't need to get in one, but they got in one, and Southampton sensed that. They were encouraged by the way Liverpool played, and they took that. As they got back into the game at 1-1, which was kind of a, it was lazy to allow them back in at that point. If you get in at half time 1-0, it's a different game, and you probably see a bit more of what we've seen all season. But to concede that goal at 1-1 and then not react at the start of the second half, it was concerning. But they've come out of it and they've won the game, and that is certainly testament to the way that they've been all season, really.
Let's do the positive first then, Mo. Fernandes scores on 56. Southampton don't have another shot until the Jack Stevens header on 95. That is, it's on Southampton's ground. They were in the ascendancy. I think there was a little bit of Southampton maybe gulped when it went 2-1. And you can understand that. That's perfectly human reaction from them. But if you're their manager, you've got to say, lads, we need to continue to carry a threat. As soon as we cease to carry a threat, Liverpool absolutely penned us in. And that's what they do. At 2-1, they smothered the life out of Southampton. It wasn't even the harrying that you saw from Jones for the opening goal. It wasn't even as basic as that. It was as simple as, you will not get to play outside of your own final third.
And they'd already done that earlier on in the game. Like the first half an hour, I think it's interesting the way that people were viewing the first half an hour. Lots of people saying, they're not at it and all this kind of thing. And there were a few sloppy moments. But by the time Liverpool scored that goal, that's the 9th shot on goal. And Southampton have only had 1.
Yeah.
And I think Salah had like 6 touches in the box in the first 22 minutes. So we are already penning them in. And then, like you say, in the second half, once that goal goes in, it seems like the added impetus, because it's that pretty much immediately after the goal that McAllister and Diaz come on. So it's whether or not he'd already decided that's how long he was going to give them, or he was like, no, we're not having this. You guys go on there and do the job. And I felt like both of them brought real impetus onto the game. McAllister, he was winning tackles a lot better, and Diaz was just giving them all kinds of fear when they was running at them. So it made it easier for Liverpool to feel like, okay, well, the game changes now in our favour from here. And like you say, Southampton, they did the same thing against Arsenal. I think it was about 62 minutes they took the lead against Arsenal, and then they basically shit a brick. And they were like, we're in the lead here. And they decided that their method was to try and defend. But, I mean, with all due respect, the reason they're at the bottom of the league is because they're not very good at defending. Like, that's not their jab. They should have continued. And by the same token, I want to give Southampton credit for the period where Liverpool are poor, because Russell Martin does make a couple of key changes, I think. He swaps the wing backs over, so Walker Peters is over on the right hand side rather than Fraser's on the left. But also, when Lallana goes off, they go from 5-4-1 to 5-3-2. They put Armstrong up alongside Onuachu. So they're able to get more use out of him and his ability.
Dibbling comes into the middle of the pitch.
Yes.
You see a lot of that running direct through the middle of the pitch. That's hurting Liverpool.
And so while Liverpool are clearly in the mode of like, okay, well, we've got one, we're just going to get to a half-time of 1-0 and then go again, which they do that too often, and it really annoys me sometimes to the way they do it, because there's ways you can do that successfully and there's ways to not do it. And the way to not do it is to just keep giving silly balls away in bad areas, which is what they were doing. But once it gets to 2-1, I was never scared of Liverpool being in a situation where you get to 85 and you're thinking, well, this isn't going to happen. Because like Mark said, I just knew that they were going to continue to get their opportunities, and particularly the way that Diaz entered the game, it was just say, come on, lads, you forget who we are here. And from then on.
I think there's still a little, I think away from home especially, Beth, I think Liverpool, Southampton, I mean this, I think it's a thing, Southampton are on the telly, the weather's up, the crowd's up, they're 1-0 down, they're on the telly, and they know this is a game that everyone's watching. They're playing Liverpool. It's a massive game. It's the reward for these players. Russell Martin talked about it before the match and said part of what we wanted last season was to get to play Liverpool this season. And I think that there's a little bit of a thing where I think Liverpool this season, if there is and now we've got a really good concrete example of it, Liverpool are going to have to realise that in away games in particular, you go one ahead, you can't coast. It's very, very difficult to coast, and Liverpool had Southampton on the back foot. So for me, it was a double-edged thing. It wasn't just one, you've coasted a little bit and let them back into it, but it was more this idea of, it doesn't look hard, this, boys, to go from 1 to 2. And then you can go, and then what goes into Southampton's brains, I think, is, oh God, don't whack us on the telly, don't embarrass us in our own ground. But instead, I think, Beth, they're going to really have to think about giving the impetus away in these games.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe something that the Arne Slot over the course, and I'm sure already, but over the course of this season will maybe learn about the Premier League, is just how easy it is for a game to change. And I think we've sort of seen enough of his team now. I mean, of course, he'd love his team to be 3-0 up at half-time, but I think generally speaking, he likes to keep things quite controlled in the first half, hopefully, get the team in front. And then once they're in front, it's then just about not doing anything daft. And then it's the second half where we've really seen Liverpool come out and thrive. And yes, that can work a lot of the time, but it can also backfire. And we saw that yesterday. I think that Southampton's penalty came from Van Dijk trying to backheel the ball like in his own half, which again, you can't criticise him too much this season. He's been pretty flawless, but like that from your club captain, it's irresponsible. At the 1-0 up away from home, you can't be doing things like that. And I'm sure Virgil will be the first to put his hands up and say, yeah, that was a bit of a mistake, it was a bit daft from me. But yeah, I think it's Liverpool now, and Liverpool always, but this season especially, they're a scalp, aren't they? And away from home, against teams that are up against it, in conditions like that yesterday, it just had all the hallmarks of a game where Liverpool could drop points. And, there was an enormous amount of pressure on Liverpool as well, don't get me wrong. I think with both, Arsenal having won at the weekend and they've got a little bit of verve back. Odegaard came back, played well. And City obviously having dropped points. I think for both of those teams, they'll have been watching it and willing, Liverpool to drop something. And I just think what you saw in the second half from Liverpool was just this sheer will to win. And I think there has been a sense within the fan base for quite a while now that this is a real opportunity this season. And I think, the players yesterday, for me, was the clearest example that they're sensing this too. And it was almost like, certainly from Mo Salah in that second half, I'm not going to let this title race sort of peter out and become too close. He wanted to maintain Liverpool's flying star and give them a really strong cushion going into Manchester City next week.
We'll do the goals in order because I think the telling in terms of how they come. I'll start with the first two. It was 20 minutes of Liverpool pressure, and in that little passage, Jones is absolutely brilliant. It's a great finish from Szoboszlai. I was delighted he scored. I'd very much like him to back it up in one of the next two because I feel as though if Liverpool can get him motoring in front of goal, then I think it would just be massive for another threat. But that goal typified what they had actually been doing well in the run up to when they get it.
Yeah, and I think it was really noticeable how pleased everybody else on the pitch was for Szoboszlai to score. They were all absolutely delighted, all running over to him, slapping him on the head, and I think it was clearly something that he was aware of and everyone was aware of, but probably is one of those where you don't want to draw attention to, you don't want to put too much pressure on him, but now that's happened, you think, oh, thank goodness. And I think it was just the calmness with which he takes it, because obviously it comes to him from a pass from Flynn Downs. He's on the edge of the box, he sees the space, and he's just like, okay, I'm just going to put it over there.
Left foot.
With his left foot. And it was brilliant the way that he was able to do that and the release that he got. And hopefully, you're right, he can kick on from there. And the way that we'd have kind of attacked at that point, I thought, okay, well, like you said before, we need to be able to go on, get a second before half-time, and then it becomes a game where you can start thinking about, in the second half, about resting players, about rotating, about saving some legs here and there. I don't know whether or not Liverpool were thinking that too soon before actually getting the second goal, but yeah. And it's funny because Szoboszlai also said in his post-match interview that that was a plan. The way that they pressed Southampton, they knew obviously Southampton were going to try and play out from the back, suicidally at times. And I'm kind of on the fence about this. And I understand why they do it sometimes, but I do think that there is times for them to not do it. And this was one of those times for them to not do it. And so it was very much like, okay, the game plan's working. Everybody's feeling good. This is what we thought we were going to get from the game, and this is what we got from the game. And then, they just probably celebrated a bit too soon, and then...
Well, I think, let's be clear, let's also... I mean, first and foremost, other than the fact that he should have been sent off, Lallana was playing well and then he gets injured, Mark. But there is, within that then, as Mo said before, he sees it as an opportunity actually to make a positive change, Russell Martin, and he goes at the heart of Liverpool, moving, dibbling in a little bit. I think it's also worth saying that he was probably delighted, Martin, with what he'd seen from Owenachu as well, where it was a bit of a gamble throwing him in, but Liverpool did find him exceptionally difficult to deal with. So all of that then, I think, filters into this period before the break, where maybe Liverpool feel as though, well, they've broken the back of Southampton, and Southampton made it absolutely crystal clear that it was quite the opposite.
Yeah, and Lallana was a funny one because you think if it wasn't him, there might have been a bit more of a protest from the Liverpool players, because it's not a nice one, is it? He's gone through him, and it's almost like everyone's taking a breath. Oh no, it's Adam. It's all right. It's nice. It's nice, old Adam. But
I'm not in favour of that sort of thing. To be honest with you. I quite like I'm not encouraging it. I quite like Mo Salah to address that issue in the mix zone as well, if he could, because I suspect Mo Salah feels the way I feel.
Yes. It probably wasn't the best, but I'll be the one to say it. Tyler Dibbin, what a fantastic player he is. Someone's got to mention him. That move central. You look at him, he's the profile of player who is going to come through as a winger, isn't he? But the way the game's going, look at someone like Morgan Rogers, players like that. He's got that running power through the middle. Szoboszlai has it. It was a move which benefited them, and he's got. And you saw it from Fernandes as well, who's a very tidy player. I didn't realise he was that young, he's only 20.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Really good player. And I thought he was I thought he was a bit older than that. But that switch helped, and then that coupled with Liverpool knocking off, as Mo says, was what turned the game really, and it was what turned the rest of the first half. And Southampton sensed it, and as you say, there's probably an element of that. It's on the telly. It's wet and windy. Let's just go for it, essentially, and that's what leads to the penalty. Onuachu up front, a very surprised selection, wasn't he? But he was an absolute handful. He was, he was there when they were up, weren't they, last before they got relegated. I think he went out on loan, but just such a difficult play, and he held it up so well up against Van Dijk. It was unfortunate for them when he went off injured, obviously, at the start of the second half. But in terms of the first half, Southampton just sensed their chance, sensed their moment, and Liverpool kind of encouraged it and almost fell into their trap in a way.
It was, I think it's worth saying, it's probably Konaté's worst 45 of the season by a distance, Beth, that first 45. You've mentioned the Van Dijk error in the run-up to the goal. On the whole, it's another day where Robertson's going to feel as though maybe like it's a bad day, and that's something that Liverpool do need to reflect on at this point, thinking about all of that. So that's 3 back 4 there. One of them's the captain that I've just sort of named and gone through. I do think that they might say, quite like the midfield to be a bit more compact in front of us for this first hour of this game, if you don't mind. Because part of why there is this running, and Mark's right to point it out as a bit of a trend, if everyone is compact and pushes up and presses, if you do play through that, there is the space the other side of it, and Liverpool sort of didn't really entirely deal with that in the first 45. It's just got to be a little bit better, and then in the run-up to the Fernandes goal, I felt Liverpool were just a little bit vague at the start of the second half as to what they were trying to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the Southampton second goal. It was a little bit of a comedy of errors, wasn't it? It was a little bit like the Ahmad winner at Old Trafford in the FA Cup, where obviously it comes from a Liverpool corner, but there was a number of players in the build-up who should have done better. I think it was it Szoboszlai who was with Diblin, and I mean, again, he was excellent, wasn't he? And it was a great little chop and pass into the feet of Armstrong, and then Armstrong does really, really well. So yeah, it was a great goal from Southampton's perspective. It was, Liverpool have been the masters of doing that this season in terms of turning defence into attack, and they've sort of fell foul of it yesterday. But yeah, it just felt like there were too many players off it for the first 50, 60 minutes. I think certainly at the back, you can make an argument maybe that's an international break thing. We know what Liverpool's record is like, certainly in terms of performances, if not results, after international breaks. We know Virgil van Dijk was maybe a little bit of a doubt coming into this one. Konaté's obviously been away with France, so you can maybe cut them a little bit of slack. Robertson, I am concerned about. I think, I'm so loath to criticise him because he has been such a tremendous player for the club, and I don't believe that his time at Liverpool is over by any means, but I do think his form this season has been a cause for concern, and that might come with the caveat of he obviously had a very disrupted pre-season. But I think, we were at a point yesterday where I was watching and I thought I'd quite like Kostas Tsimikas to come on, and obviously he was unavailable. He had a knock, so he was on the bench, but I think it's, that's a very rare phenomenon, really, and I think it's been quite a frequent one this season where you actually looking and you're thinking maybe Tsimikas might be better to come in here.
To be fair, what I would say on Robertson is I think he's one of the ones who really steps up a level at 2-1 when it's in their final third, and also it is him who's behind Sugawara for the pen.
Yeah,
and it's the ball from Salah. It's Sugawara himself who I think never really looked like he settled in the game. And that happens from time to time. Just never looked like he settled in the game. But it's Robertson who is there at the back post, who's looking to get on the end of any ball that comes in. And it's interesting to me that I really do feel as though Robertson at the minute looks like he suits it when Liverpool are on the front foot a lot more. When Liverpool are on the back foot, which we sometimes like to be, that feels as though that's when he gets ran at or gets exposed.
I actually think, I completely agree with that, and I think it's almost like a reverse of what we've seen from Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson in the past, whereas Trent has often been criticised for the defensive side of his game. Robertson, that's never really been much of a thing, but I think actually this season Trent has improved an awful lot defensively, and I think Robertson has looked exposed at times in a way that we perhaps haven't seen before. We know how good he is when he's making those overlapping runs and he's bursting forward, and his sort of energy and will to win can never be questioned. But I think there was a moment, I think it might be when Liverpool were winning actually, when it was back to 3-2, and there's a ball played over the top, and I can't remember who it was, but someone got in behind Robertson, and Liverpool were lucky actually. I think it was Konaté sort of shepherds it out, and Southampton.
Yeah, it comes across. Konaté sees him out for
and Robertson was lucky there because he had completely switched off, and I agree. I think that is, for me, that is the concern. I think it's just defensively just looks a little bit a little bit off the pace. But I also think as well, I don't know if that's a mentality, like a confidence thing. I think, I've said this a couple of times this season, Robertson's not daft. He knows what people are saying about him. He came out after a game a couple of weeks ago and said, people are trying to write me off. So he knows what the discourse is around him at the moment. And you just wonder if maybe it is a case of he's a little bit down on confidence and that's feeding into his performances a little bit.
I think there's a little thing. I think when I think about front-footed with him, I also sort of mean front-footed in terms of he would rather Liverpool were defending in a front-footed way. Mm-hmm. I think he is one of the ones who finds the at times sort of passive arm's length nature of what Liverpool are doing to be a little bit tricky, and I think it does in a really weird way. It opens you up for the opposition to be able to pick where they're going to attack a little bit more. You think in seasons gone by it wasn't that Liverpool wouldn't be attacked, but it was that every attack felt as though it was breakneck stuff. So this goes both ways. Liverpool are sort of composing themselves and sitting in a little bit, but that allows the opposition at times to move the ball a little bit and go, okay, be a bit more forensic and go, all right, we'll go there. And that's what I'm sort of saying. I think that when Liverpool are chasing, or when Liverpool are aggressive, or when Liverpool are defending areas, it looks to me like Robertson's looks like his normal self. It's when the opposition have had the ball for 10 passes that I'm actually worried about him in a weird way.
And I feel like that kind of was the only real defensive knock about him in the last few years of Jurgen Klopp, because I think there were certain teams who would want him to try and rush out at times and maybe look to play in behind him. I think away at City last season was one where that happened quite a few times, and it's difficult for a relatively mature dog to learn new tricks at times, and I think particularly when he's been so successful with what he's been doing and how he's been doing it. I also think the other thing that we're seeing at the moment, whether or not this is still just a remnant from the summer or this is going to be him going forward, he's not. The thing about the Villa game and why I think he was so good was it was his only game for that week. He's just come off the back of 2 games with Scotland, one of which was a very emotional game, very emotional high, scores the last minute winner. And to go again for him at the moment is probably harder now.
6 days though, Mo.
But
I take the emotional aspect, but it is 6 days. It was Monday night, wasn't it? I mean, I watched it.
But it still felt to me like he wasn't at his sharpest. And again, with the fact that obviously Tsimikas isn't available, or we don't know for how long he's available, and the games that we've got coming up, it is concerning. I do think that whether or not it's something that can be managed and whether or not he's just going to have to get used to playing a slightly different way, I don't know. But yeah, there are things when you think about what's going to be happening on the wings, particularly for Real Madrid, and you compare that with what we saw from him in that game, it is a worry. It's something that you can see them potentially targeting. But as Beth said, it wouldn't be the first time that he's had criticism and he's kind of come back. He's that kind of character where you can see him maybe knuckling down and proving something.
2 homes as well.
I think on the emotional point, I know everyone's mentioned his pre-season and he didn't get up to speed with the new manager. The Euros, he had that, and that meant a lot to him for Scotland, to be the captain of that side. I was at the game against Hungary when they got knocked out, and he was devastated. I was looking at him down there. It was the game when Hungary scored the last minute winner, didn't they?
Yeah.
It was like the 100th minute. Great rewrite that was for the paper, but he was crushed, and he was. And I thought about him at the start of this season, and actually, funny enough, Szoboszlai as well. I sort of see it in him a little bit in that game as well. He was so emotional. He was tearing around the pitch. It meant so much to him. I think those are 2 players within the squad who. We all know international breaks are not the most convenient things in the world, but I think it's really important for those 2 players. And Robertson's the captain, as you say, with the goal.
So Szoboszlai.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again in that game, the 2 of them were captain, and they didn't want to acknowledge each other. They wanted to beat each other so much. And Szoboszlai was even on the right hand side at one point, and they were just going past each other. No, I'm not talking to you. I know, they just weren't. They weren't engaging. It means so much to them, and I think for a player of Robertson's age. I agree with the 2 games a week thing. I think it's getting to the point now where we've seen links with someone like Kirkes and other left backs around. Tsimikas has been doing okay. Whether or not that's a sustainable thing, I don't know. But for now, he's used for a player to have. And I just think with Robertson, I'm not giving up on him yet. I just think he's perhaps got to as you say, with the whole slow build-up thing and everything, he needs to learn more of what the manager wants of him, because he feels like he's been the sort of slowest one to pick it up a little bit.
Okay, it goes 2-1. Liverpool smother Southampton, Beth. Let's sort of accentuate that positive before I want to talk about two players briefly. McAllister and Diaz obviously both come on. Diaz probably should score. It's millimetres. It's good play in there. And the key thing is the goals come at a good time. Liverpool never get to the point where it's genuinely frantic. They're able to continually measure their performances, but they do a really, really good job. They do such a good job. As I say, we criticised a lot of them in a number of different ways during this, but they are so good at 2-1 that you never quite got to the point where you thought, oh God, we could be on the other end of one here. It never quite reached that sort of abyss moment.
Yeah, and I think the crucial thing was the players didn't panic. You know, there wasn't loads of players having pot shots from 30 yards. You know, McAllister has one that goes wide, but only narrowly wide. It was a decent effort, and apart from that, you could tell that Liverpool was still, they weren't trying to force it. They were still content to just sort of pass it. And I think it sort of comes back to one thing that I think has become a bit of a hallmark of the season so far, and it's something that they were so good at under Jurgen Klopp, is that belief that they're going to go on and win games. That was, you know, in that 2019-20 season where it felt like they won every week. You always felt, no matter if they were a goal down, no matter how long was left on the clock, they'd find a way to win, or at least to get a point. And I think Liverpool lost that a little bit, certainly toward the back end of last season. It felt like there was doubt creeping in, whereas I think now teams are starting to look at Liverpool and think they're inevitable a little bit, and I think that is so important. And I think for the Liverpool players as well, they felt that, and I think you could see that yesterday. And yeah, it was a very professional period of the game. I thought, having sort of not been particularly professional in the first half, I thought the way they managed it from 2-1 to 2-2, and then obviously to go on and get the penalty, and they could have been out of sight at the end. Salah is obviously really, really unlucky. He hits the post. There was one where the ball gets put across and it's just behind Diaz, is it?
That's a 2-1, I think. But that one, that's the Nunez one from earlier on. But there's another time when the ball strips across in the 3-2 period as well.
Yeah, so they created a number of really good chances, or half chances. So they weren't just sort of trying to force it. And yeah, I thought they dealt with things quite professionally in the second half.
We end up, there's two players I want to talk about briefly, Mo. You know, we praised the full side there. I want to accentuate the positives of one in particular, because he got the goal, Szoboszlai, to open the scoring. I thought you got to see all facets of what we've seen this season in him playing that role over the course of the game. So you got to see the hard running. We got the goal that we wanted to see. I thought there was 2 or 3 moments where I think he plays absolutely brilliantly, and then there is 2 or 3 moments where you are just mildly infuriated by the decision that he makes or something like that, to the point of him being captain of Hungary. I think there's a little thing for all of us in this, a slight cautionary one, which is he's so young.
Yeah.
So it just sort of hit me a period yesterday when I was thinking about the age of this Liverpool side and watching them go through the gears of professionalism, is that there's still a fair few of them who, whilst they're not young at this point, they're not in the teens, they're coming into their mature years. It's not the other way around.
Yes,
Liverpool haven't got that many who are 29. They've got the fellas who we know are over 30, and they've got a lot of lads who are sort of 23, 24, 25, and I think it's important to remember that for Szoboszlai playing this role.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we wanted, right? Like, we were complaining all about that for the last 2 years. But there are obviously things that you have to come with that. Like you say, the maturing, we are watching it happen in real time. So it's not going to be the finished article. There's going to be times where it struggles. And I think decision making for him is something that it's always more accentuated, because it's very much like if he makes the right decision, it's a goal, because we've got such great forwards. But if he makes the wrong decision and it's not a goal, then obviously the spotlight goes on him. And I feel like he kind of feels the pressure of that at times, whereas when he's playing for Hungary, the chances are, if he's in that situation, he's the one going to be taking the shot, so it doesn't really matter.
People are giving him the ball and saying, you sort this out.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas he knows that he's not the last point in the chain, so it does become a little bit more of a difficult decision to make. And it's something that he will hopefully relax from getting his goal, and hopefully start to kind of understand when and how to make those decisions a little bit more.
The other player I'd love to have got a goal over the course of the game, Mark, was Nunez. He again doesn't shirk. All the way through the game, he doesn't shirk. You know, he wants responsibility. He wants the ball. He, works really, really hard out of possession. maybe a little less patient than on the Szoboszlai point, and maybe it is just as simple as Szoboszlai kicks it in the goal in this one and Nunez doesn't. I just think there needs to be more penalty box involvement, more penalty spot involvement, more 6-yard box, more that strip between the sticks going all the way back to the edge of the area. You're seeing everything but that, but you need to see that. You know, Liverpool can't keep looking at Salah. They need to see. I want to do the thing where I say at least he was in the position to miss one, if you see what I mean. Like, and this is, I'm now at the point with it where that is my issue is now he's not in a position to miss one.
It feels like you're seeing a kind of evolution of a player, but not in the way that we expect it to be. You know, like he was this all action. You know, he still is obviously with this all action shots from everywhere. Now he's been asked to do a certain job by the manager, and with that job comes get the 6-yard box goals, be in the right position, be in the right place at the right time, and he at the moment isn't delivering that. It's whether he's getting a bit too involved in the other stuff, he's drifting a bit too far wide. He's a fascinating player to watch, and we've obviously seen more of him than perhaps we would have done if Jota wasn't injured. So when Jota comes back, it's interesting to see what happens, because Jota was starting off in that role, was looking perfect for what Slot wants, wasn't he?
But in that ill-fated 2-5 against Madrid, he scores the goal that you want to see him scoring. You know, he opens the scoring for Liverpool in a Champions League, massive Champions League tie against Real Madrid, does absolutely brilliantly to do so, and he is between the sticks when he does it. I can't conceive of that now on Wednesday, because I've just not seen it. I've not seen it for this many appearances.
And whether that's the way they're playing, I mean, obviously the emphasis on Salah and Diaz or Gakpo, if he's there, is to come inside, and so perhaps Nunez is creating a space for him by doing that. But yeah, he needs a goal in a big game, and it would be in these two big games.
I think he needs a centre forwards goal.
Yeah,
he doesn't just need a goal. I think he needs a header at the near post.
Yes, exactly.
He needs a rebound off the keeper.
And there are a couple of opportunities there where he could have had that yesterday, where he could have got on the end of something, and that's what you want to see. Just that kind of that belief that he can get on the end of something to get that goal. And if it can come against Real Madrid or Man City, think how he'd feel then. You know, he'd be absolutely flying. So it's an evolution thing at a point when, look, we all know, we all look at the league table constantly at the minute. We see where everything is. We need him to be a little bit better, I think, in terms of taking things on to where things could go.
Okay, we're going to talk about the league table in a minute or two, but before then, here is Si Hughes talking about his book, Chasing Salah.
It's John Givens from the Anfield Wrap with a quick interjection to let you know a little bit more about a fantastic offer at the moment at Anfield with LFC Tours. Now, if you've not been to the Anfield on a non-match day for a while, you've not done one of the stadium tours for a while, or you don't know about the full range of activities they have at the moment, then this is a fantastic opportunity to have a look into it and also save yourself some money, because there's loads going on a non-match day. There's the classic stadium tour, of course, that is always being developed, and that includes the newly designed LFC Museum, which is absolutely brilliant. You can even abseil from Anfield if you want at the moment, and there's Legends, Q&As and Ultimate Anfield experiences as well. And until December the 2nd, you can get money off, and it's a really good discount as well. It is 30% off the classic stadium tour. That includes the museum as well, with the code Black Friday 30. So that is Black Friday 30 when you're booking. You can either book a particular date, or you can get a gift voucher from that as well, and you get 30% off. Or if you want to do something a little bit more special, there is the Legends Q&As. So after the stadium tour, you'll hear from a legend who's played and won trophies, I'm sure, for Liverpool Football Club, just to hear a little bit more from them, and maybe a chance to ask a question there yourself as well. Or there's the Anfield experience, or the Ultimate LFC experience as well. They are really special. I've been lucky enough to go on one of those, and it makes you feel like an absolute VIP and maybe a Liverpool player yourself. Or also there's the Anfield Abseil, so if you're brave and you want to tackle that, there is that as well. So if you can see yourself abseiling from the top of the main stand, why not get stuck in? Because at the moment you've got 20% off all of those with the code Black Friday 20. Like I said before, you can book for a specific date, or you can get a gift voucher for yourself or a family member for Christmas as well. So get ahead for Christmas with LFC Tours. If you're interested in finding out more about those experiences, or you want to book, you just need to go to lfc.tv/tours. That's lfc.tv/tours and get stuck in.
It's Neil Atkinson with Si Hughes, his book Chasing Salah. We're going to do an extended interview about some of the themes and some of the bits that come up in this. For this one though, for this insert, it is just broad strokes around the whole book. Si, and you know, the first thing that it's written on the back of the book, one of the things that's fascinating about Salah, and is increasingly beginning to shift, I'd argue a little bit, is he has been quite inscrutable. He's not given a lot of himself away a lot of the time since he's been at Liverpool, but he has simultaneously managed to depict this idea of quite an intelligent, quite a thoughtful man, I think, when he has spoken and in what you hear about him in dispatches.
Yeah, well, when he communicates with people, it tends to be in the cryptic, particularly in social media, and gets everybody thinking. He does know how to stimulate a debate, which I find quite interesting. He clearly knows this is gonna cause a conversation, and yet we never really know what he's thinking all the time. And clearly, there's evidence over his time at Liverpool that he is prepared to say what he thinks at certain moments.
Yeah.
And when that comes out, it's volcanic, and people find it quite hard to comprehend, because otherwise he keeps his thoughts to himself. And that's why I wanted to write the book, because he's been at Liverpool for such a long time, and he's almost been hidden in plain sight during that period, and rarely spoken to anybody about his innermost thoughts, and most importantly the forces around him. I think that has a real impact on why he communicates to the outside world. The outside world, it's not like he's in a bunker, is it? But you know what I mean? That's why he communicates the way he does.
The thing I think which is most fascinating about the book, I think the book's excellent, is the fact that I think you've charted his growth, his change, I think in quite a marked way. Some footballers, you feel like they turn up fully formed. Jude Bellingham's a really good recent example. Jude Bellingham's given interviews at the age of 18 and everyone's knocked over by the way in which he's able to speak and the way in which he perceives the world and the football world around him. With Salah, it really feels like what you've got in this book is a person who finds himself in a situation, takes a bit of time to understand that situation, takes a bit of time to work out how he's going to deal with that situation. Sometimes it goes wrong, as in the Chelsea chapter, but then imposes himself on that world everywhere bar arguably Chelsea. He finds his way through, and that's why I do think he is fascinating. I think he's a very different person now to the one who turned up in 2017. I think the one in 2017 is a very different player to the player and person to the one who emerged at Bâle going back all those years. That's what I think is really interesting. There is real change through him.
Massively, yeah. I mean, everything can be explained, I think, by where he is from. He comes from a very small village / town. I'm still not quite sure whether it's a village or a town, because
I've
been, but it's sort of an identical town in the Nile Delta where life isn't easy for everybody. He comes from a relatively secure background in terms of financial means, but that doesn't mean that everything's easy for him. Yeah. And the one outstanding sort of memory that people have there is of this kid running around in jeans and a baggy shirt. Now, you compare him that to now, he's a machine, isn't he? Somebody said to me, he's more of a Djokovic than a Federer, like he's a sheer instrument of will. And over the years, you can see the physical change in him gradually. And the thing that I find really remarkable about him is that he arrives at Liverpool as one player. If and when he leaves, he will leave as a very different player, but still an equally effective player. I think he's a much more rounded footballer now. When he arrived, it was obviously his pace that just shone through. He doesn't use that, well, maybe he doesn't have that pace quite as much now, but he's a much more intelligent footballer who has learnt about the game and has been able to absorb the game around him as well. So I think his story is a powerful story, because it shows it shows younger footballers that things don't always just go in this straight linear line. But if you keep at it and you keep investing in yourself without being too evangelical about it, you can reach a point where which is comparable to where he's at now, because he's really, really worked on himself to put himself in that position. It hasn't just happened, and it's been easy for him all the way through. And a lot of that, I do think a lot of that comes from his earliest steps into football, where he's having to make the journey that everybody knows about. I've been to, as you say, I've been to Nagrig and made that journey myself, and I've sort of mentioned this in the book, where I was thinking, this is fine, but I'm an adult, you know what I mean? I don't really understand what it is like as a young person making this journey day after day and all the uncertainty. And I think if he looks back, that will be given that sense of independence that we can see now, this sort of mystique around him, because there was lots of boys doing it. There were lots of boys going from the countryside into Cairo, but only he has got to where he is. So he's got this, very independent mindset, which I think comes from that period.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, he released at one point some text in Arabic going back to when he was having trouble with Egypt, and the translation was, be yourself, never be like anyone else, never let other opinions be like a prison for you, never be a size which fits for others, just be yourself. And this to me feels as though this is the defining almost creed that underwrites a lot of what he is, a lot of what he's become, whilst in the context also as genuinely, again with the exception of Chelsea, and you can very much argue in the long run he does it, just dealing with setbacks. There will be setbacks, but he will find a way to deal with every single setback that comes in his path. And I think that this is the story of Salah, really is, and that independence doesn't cease. Like he doesn't even allow that idea of settling for his own opinion of himself. He then becomes something different again. And I just find that's why I do find him endlessly fascinating, both as a footballer but also as a person.
Well, this is the thing about him. He is the first Egyptian footballer to achieve what he's done. He's the first Muslim footballer from North Africa, sort of the Middle East, to get that sort of global status. He is treading ground that nobody else has tread before. So he's learning about the world around him as he goes. It's not easy to do that,
There's no obvious role model, is there?
He's not come up through a system like a lot of players do in the Premier League now, an academy system where, there is advice and guidance about how to deal with the media and everything else, and then you throw into Egypt into that, where the passion for football is absolutely insane. Like I know every country sort of will claim to be football crazy, but he is going into a world where Egypt is changing.
There's huge amounts of turmoil during his career in his home country.
Massively. The expectations on footballers are changing, and he's expected to be everything to everybody. And sometimes when you try and be everything to everybody, you're nothing to anyone in particular. You know what I mean? So it's a very difficult ground that he's treading on, particularly when he's learning about, a world around him that he might not naturally understand, which is why I think he does do a lot of reading, and why he's trying to almost understand the forces around him as it goes and changes, because they are significant. I mean, I don't think anybody can overestimate the challenge of being the most famous Egyptian footballer in the country's history across the world at a time when there's limitations on the people there, and the authority of the state, and the impact that has on people. It's not easy to actually express yourself.
Well, a really good and sort of very much, which will feel like it's a trivial example, but very much isn't, of that, which you detail in the book, is, for instance, and I'm bringing it up because it's approaching, is his relationship to what we can just sort of call in general the festive period. That he will not take a backward step on this in that way. He gets untold criticism every single year from, theoretically, when people try to impose identity on Salah, we get to literally watch him humble himself before God after every goal he scores for Liverpool. He's very, very close to his faith in that very public way on the one hand, but on the other hand, he is, if I say relentlessly, it'll sound like I'm almost putting some editorialism on it. I'm not meaning to, but he will relentlessly find a way to say that he wants to be part of a festive tradition that is held in the country that he currently lives in, and he's going to do that again. You know what I mean? He's going to do that again.
Done it every year since he started.
And he won't. And I just that is part of what you're saying, isn't it? This. He will just walk. He is working his own path out, and when he settles on something, he will stick with it unless there's a reason to think of it again. And the thoughtfulness around all of that, I think, is genuinely fascinating, and I think it tells us a lot about the character.
Well, if you take it back to his first year at Liverpool, obviously he scored all the goals that he did, and one of the arguments of why he doesn't always get involved in sort of straight away in the politics and the religious aspects of the conversation around him is that he thinks back about that period, and all he did really was score goals and make everybody sort of start to see Muslims as a acceptable face of Britain, if you like, and it certainly happened in this city, changed attitudes. And he thinks back to that period and concludes, well, if I do everything that I can do on a football pitch, and yes, being from where I am, being of the faith that I am, is a part of me, but it should not be the definition of me. And that he thinks that achievement alone is strong enough to change people's opinions. Which I can see that argument, but I suppose sometimes events get in the way. This is not just me. The book isn't just me sort of saying, he's made the right decision all the time. I can understand why. Maybe certainly there's an expectation in Egypt of him to respond at certain points when events around him, like we've seen in Gaza over the last 12 months. But again, it's understanding the difficulty of being in his position, because every time he opens his mouth, it has an impact on the state, which is an authoritarian state. It has an impact on his family. So he has to choose his words very carefully and act very carefully. It's not as easy as just to say, boom, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I think all the time, because there were other players who came before him who now don't have a voice. So maintaining that voice is the most important thing for him.
Did writing the book make you like him more?
Well, this is the thing about him. I love him as a footballer. I've never been in love with the player's personality, because we know so little about him. I'm fascinated by his story. I understand him more than I did at the beginning. But yeah, the thing that I love about him really is the fact that I thought that some of the records that he's almost he's got close to now, they were written in history forever and they were never going to change. And he's done something that no other Liverpool player's done. So, in terms of his personality, I still find a distance from him, and I think that still appears in the book. And I've almost deliberately done it that way, because I think he's almost untouchable. You can't quite get close enough to him. There's still that mystique around him. But I think that will be in place forever, to be honest, because I very much doubt he's ever going to tell anybody about his innermost thoughts, which is why I wanted to write the book, to be honest.
There we are. The book is excellent. It's very much worth reading. If you want to know more about Mo Salah, and crucially more about the wider context, the world, his friends, the people he's worked with, and his overall career, Mo Salah is not interviewed for the book at any point, because then Syed gets to know him a bit more, and Salah doesn't want that to happen. But you find out more about Mo Salah and about all the other stuff as well. As I say, I thought it was really, really good indeed. Do check it out. It's from everywhere you get your books from. Chasing Salah, the biography. And if we put this out at the right time, and I think we will, I've sort of made a live decision while Sy was talking. Sy will be in conversation about this with Brian Reid at Waterstones in Liverpool on the Thursday after Real Madrid. Thank you very much to him. Check the book out, Chasing Salah.
Great stuff from Sy there. Before the Real Madrid game, we'll be doing a meet-up for anyone who listens to this, really. If you want to come to Gravity Max, we'll be knocking around there until about 6 o'clock, so we'll be there in the afternoon. So Gravity Max, if you want to come in Liverpool 1, first floor, the bar up there, we'll be hanging around. If people want to come and say hello, please do so. And apart from that, just enjoy the free week. If you're listening to this and you don't normally subscribe to the Anfield Wrap, every single Anfield Wrap subscription show is available for free this week from wherever you get your podcasts or videos all the way through the week, so do check all that out. Let's do the bigger picture, Beth. City won't stay this sloppy. Ultimately we can't therefore be this sloppy as we were for that period that we've talked about and been critical about. But City will not stay that sloppy. If anything, from our point of view, Tottenham have hit it too well. He's going to make changes, Guardiola. He's got a game midweek, then he's got the game against us. It's a good win for Arsenal. And it feels like Saka's going to continually have a say at home. But you can't keep caveating your reality, which is that we'd have all given practically every organ we have spare for this table after 12 games. You just have to emphasise that. Are there areas Liverpool could improve in? Yes. Is the feeling that the opposition aren't going to stay where they have done? Yes. But the truth of it is Liverpool are going into that Manchester City game in about as good a position as it's conceivable to be.
Yeah, and if they win that game, then I think that is maybe when the caveats have to stop. And don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly guilty of it as well, because I think you fear, it is so early in the season, there's so much that can still happen. And obviously when Liverpool were 2-1 down yesterday, you're looking at that thinking, there's every chance by this time next week what could have been an 11-point gap to Manchester City is suddenly a 2-point gap, and the title race is right back on. So Liverpool's win yesterday was massive. It was absolutely huge, and it means that the pressure is completely on Manchester City, I think, next week. Of course, Liverpool want to win the game. They certainly don't want to lose the game with it being at Anfield, but they can afford to draw it. It would be nice in terms of a statement to go and win it. I think the thing when you go back to 1920, and it's impossible not to draw parallels with that season, because Liverpool had a similar gap, going into playing Manchester City at that time. is that I think when Liverpool win that game to go 9 points clear, I think it was at the time of City, it was almost like after that, psychologically, City gave up a little bit. And I think that is the only way that you can beat Manchester City. It's almost like wearing them down, like early on in the season, before they have the chance to click into gear, as we know they like to do in the new year. So yeah, it's a massive week for Liverpool. It's a massive game next week. Liverpool can't afford to be complacent. They can't afford to be dropping sloppy points. They can't afford to be having these emotionally charged games in the way that they had yesterday every single week. But Manchester City, they do look a shadow of themselves at the moment. I agree with you. There is a part of you that when Tottenham make it 4-0, you think, actually, this could actually not work in Liverpool's favour, because surely next week they're going to be fired up. Surely they can't lose six games in a row, although they have got a Champions League game.
Feyenoord at home on Tuesday.
Midweek, which, perhaps offers them the opportunity to sort of stop the rot a little bit. But I do think that they definitely do have shades of Liverpool the season before last, where there's a number of top players within that squad who've achieved so much, who've achieved more than the players that Liverpool did, but just sort of look a little bit knackered, and look a little bit like, and not just knackered in terms of that it's been a long season, just almost as if the legs have gone a little bit. And don't get me wrong, what they've achieved, regardless of how they might have achieved it, and that will all come to light, I'm sure, in due course, but in terms of what they've achieved on the pitch, it has been incredible. And to have that mentality and that desire to go and win 4 Premier League titles in a row, it takes something special. But you can't do that every year. Surely it does get to a point where that hunger does diminish a little bit. Kevin De Bruyne, for example, who's won titles for them single-handedly at times, won games for them single-handedly. He's obviously not playing it as prominent a role, and even when he is on the pitch, he doesn't look like the same player. So it does feel a little bit like City are where Liverpool were a couple of years ago, in the sense they've got some players who they maybe just need to move on. And yeah, whether they can sort that out this season, I'm sure they'll go into the market in January. Be interesting to see if they go in for Martin Zubimendi, who obviously Liverpool were interested in the summer. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if City dropped more points this season, and I think certainly if Liverpool could go 11 points clear, I think psychologically that would be a huge blow.
Liverpool 2 years ago played Manchester City at Anfield, win 1-0. It's the point about this is, Mark, I think they can really rouse themselves. I think if there's anywhere, in a way, it's almost Guardiola's dream league game, the next league game, which is, lads, what, you're going to embarrass yourselves at Anfield? You're not going to embarrass yourselves at Anfield. Everything that you've been through up against Liverpool, that's not happening in this one, and this is how we're going to work towards it, and this is what we're going to do. The one thing is, though, it looked to me, to Beth's point, watching some of those City players run back towards their own goal in that game against Tottenham, it just looks to me like there were players who just did not have enough left to give. I'm not going to start talking about people's commitment or anything like that, because if anything, in a way, it's almost more damning. If you're wringing the towel dry at this point and you cannot get back to defend your own goal in this situation, it will make me worry more from a Manchester City point of view, not worry less. Yeah.
At 2-0, I'm still looking at it thinking, they'll come back in this, they'll get one back, but it just wasn't there, was it? It just, whether that's a spirit thing, whether it's, I think it's legs. I think that's right. I think it's just they can't stir themselves for it. And you look at someone like Kyle Walker, who's been such a player for them for so many years. And it's almost like the legs have gone, so has the heart gone a bit? Because he just seemed to. He was running backwards for the one at the end, wasn't he? So there's, and we know what Guardiola thinks about Anfield. We've seen him shout to the heavens there before and do all sorts of things. He's going to have, he'd have had this game ringed before the start of the season anyway. But given everything that's going on, I think you're right. I think you think back to that 1-0, and I don't think anyone was very confident going into that, were they? But they could turn, if they can find it in them to put together a performance, then of course it's not going to be easy for Liverpool, but that 11-point gap is just so tantalising, and if it is achieved, then I think Guardiola said it himself, didn't he? If it is achieved, he doesn't think they'll come back from that, and what happens next for them, it's probably connected to everything else that's going on off the pitch, but to lose 4-0 at home to Tottenham, it's genuinely, you look at the scoreline, it just doesn't make any sense, does it? Some of the other results, I thought, you can lose at Brighton, you can lose at Bournemouth. Sporting wasn't a 4-1 really. 4-0 at home to Tottenham, and that result cannot happen without without consequences, and he has to get them together. I mean, I'm sure they're in there now getting ready for the game tomorrow, and changes have to be made. I think some of these younger lads have to come in because he's not really got anybody else, and it'd be interesting if some changes do result and they get a win, which you expect them to against Feyenoord, and if one or two of the younger players, someone like James McAtee or someone with a bit of legs, bit of energy, because they need a spark, and because there are so many players there who look a bit sorry for themselves, and it is quite remarkable to see.
It's funny actually talking about the young players and stuff, because City have sold so many good young players in recent times that have gone on to do great things for other clubs. It's like, well, you'd assume that maybe if they're in a similar situation to we were around January, February last season, that they would trust more of them and say, okay, go out there and maybe help us make the difference, because the echoes of what they're in now is so similar to what we were in 18 months ago, down to the fact, like, you look at the starting lineup against Spurs, you've got Haaland and Foden are the only two in that 23 to 28 bracket. Everyone is either older or younger than that, and it starts to make a difference because you're asking those two in particular to do so much. And obviously Haaland's been fantastic this season, but he's starting to show some of the wear and tear of being the main go-to guy for club and country for a long extended period of time. So he could do with maybe the rest of his team kind of bailing him out a little bit. But I'm fascinated by the messaging that's been going on around Man City. Like, Guardiola has been talking about how Rodri is irreplaceable, about how, of course, you're going to miss. Like, he's not mitigated any of that. He's not said, well, obviously he's a great player, but we've got plenty of great players in our squad, and we should be able to keep going. And he's really leaned into the fact that, oh, it's terrible, and it's the same with the injury situation. It's like he's trying, like, he's giving people excuses to get out of things. And you also wonder about the fact that something Jurgen Klopp always spoke about, which is like, at what point do players just stop listening to you? At what point does it stop having as good an effect however you are? So everyone saw him signing the new contract as potentially a big bonus before the game. That's going to give him a fillip. There's probably people in that dressing room who were like, oh, for fuck's sake, I thought this was over soon. And you just get into a certain different mindset. And I think that the interesting thing for me about what you were saying about the fact that Spurs won 4-0 it's almost like, whether this is just from the outside and whether Liverpool will be able to protect themselves from it, but everybody's going to be thinking like, well, if we don't win that, it's going to be a disappointment. Where the reality is, Beth, you're right, we should be able to come out of that draw and think we're in a very, very good position. Like, so how we deal with that will be fascinating to see, but I think that we can't shy away from the fact that this is the best version of City for us to face that we've been up against in a long, long time.
My one thing on City is it's just beginning to have vague feelings of Liverpool 1990, 1991. That season, Liverpool go to Elland Road, go 4-0 up. Leeds get it back to 4-0. Liverpool win the game 5-4. But over the course of that campaign, there's the 4-0 at Goodison. There's a game where Liverpool get beat 4-2 at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. There's a 3-0 defeat at Highbury as Arsenal are going to go on and win the league that season. They lose 3-1 at Kenilworth Road. They lose 3-1 at Old Trafford. They get beat 3-1 against QPR at Anfield. And Liverpool still finished second that season. And on the day, they're more than capable. You know, they can go to Elland Road. Leeds are going to win the league the year after. They can score 5 goals. It's there. And I think that when I've been watching City in the two games, most recent games in the league, Brighton and Tottenham, first 20-25 minutes, it wouldn't have surprised you if they were 2 or 3-0 clear. And that could still happen at Anfield, and that's why I think guarding against that complacency is really important. And if they do get themselves into a lead, there's no better place for them to backs against the wall and show it. But I think that's what you're up against. I think we need to remember it. We just had the news during the show that Vinicius Jr. Is meant to be reported out for 4 weeks before the game at Anfield against Madrid. Beth, it's a comfortable win for Madrid on Sunday. They pick a pretty strong side. It's close to what we're getting in there, with the exception, obviously, of Vinicius Jr., who's now finds himself out. If anything, that might clarify the situation. This is a game Real Madrid can't afford to lose.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a bigger game for Madrid than it is for Liverpool in terms of the permutations of it. Liverpool can afford to lose it and still will probably qualify in the top 8 quite comfortably.
We'll probably still be top at the end of Wednesday, quite conceivably, even if Liverpool get beat. Certainly they will be if they draw.
But it is Real Madrid and it's at Anfield, and there is that element of romanticism. I suppose the question is how much will Arne Slot engage with that, because he isn't really a romantic. We've seen that he's someone who's more of a of a sort of cool, calculated winner. So I'm intrigued. I've seen a few people say they'd play the reserves. I'm sure that won't happen. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see a few changes, but I still think Arne Slot will go for a fairly strong team.
What's your few changes? Can I give you mine and you can judge me?
Go on.
I think he'll start Diaz centre forward. I think McAllister will come in for Jones or Szoboszlai. I would have thought the plan might have been Jones, but I think Szoboszlai scoring makes me want to go with Szoboszlai.
Yeah.
And then I think it'll be the same back four, unless Shimikasa happened to just be a very minor knock / illness / whatever it was. I think he just sort of does have to go with the same back four.
Yeah, the only change he could possibly make is Joe Gomez at left back, maybe.
Or Joe Gomez at right back.
Or at right back, yeah. I wouldn't be averse to bringing Joe Gomez in either one of those positions, actually. Probably left back, because I think he actually did a tremendous job there last season, and I know you'll lose something in an attacking perspective. But when you think Robertson's not in the best of form and he's going to be up against some top players, I wouldn't mind bringing Joe Gomez in for that one on Wednesday.
I'd consider Gomez on the right. If Mbappe's going to play off that side, as we're suggesting he is now with that injury, that could offer that bit more solidity than Bradley, who did a perfectly fine job at the weekend, but obviously a different type of fullback. I like the rest of the changes, though. I think he's not going to make the big wholesale ones. I don't think he is. He's going to do what he's done all season. We know he trusts that core group of 15, 16. He's going to make those little tweaks in midfield. The Szoboszlai point, I think, is a good one. It's better off leaving him in. And you've got the changes. You can bring on Curtis Jones for him after an hour. Up front, Núñez perhaps can sit this one out to play against City, because you look at the job that Solanke did for Spurs against City's defenders at the weekend, holding that position up front, playing everything around him, for it was excellent. This is what we hope Núñez can become, right? So it would be a great game for him to show that. So I think those changes would make sense to me. But there's no getting away from the fact that it's the lesser game of the week, which is a bizarre thing to say. I love the fact of the idea of Real Madrid knocking around here and no one really bothered about them. Everyone's just
not quite going to be that, is it? It's not going to be that in the ground, it's worth saying.
But Slot is very good at taking the emotion out of things, and I think he'll be able to do that. And I think the crowd will be up for it. It's Real Madrid at home. You can't not be. Once the game starts, it's 3 points to get, and for Real Madrid, it's huge. They've lost 2 of their 4. This would make it 6 points from 5 games. It would put them in that kind of weird sort of hinterland that's down there, in sort of 20th, 21st, around there. Liverpool will be 9 points ahead of them with 3 games left in the group. So that's the mountain that they've got to sort of get to those sides. And Real Madrid could be looking at a playoff, a really tough playoff, in which they play, if they finish in that bottom half, they play the first leg away. They play the first leg at home. So they don't want that, obviously, the proud history that they have. So the onus is on them. And so I could see a situation where after an hour it's maybe 0-0 or 1-1, and then it's how the Liverpool, sort of kicking off from there, because Real Madrid will have to go for it.
I agree that it's the least important of the 3 games of this week, but I don't think it's that. The difference isn't that big to me. I think this is still a massively important game for all of the reasons we've outlined in terms of what it can do for them and their season, because their next game after us is away at Atalanta, who are currently top of Serie A. So there's no easy game there, and if they then lose that as well, then they're maybe even in a struggle to even get into the playoff situation. And we've seen so many times where Real Madrid look a bit ropey and maybe just scrape through the group stages, and then they get to April and they look like their old selves. So if there is an opportunity to put them down, to put them out, then please let's take that. And then we can think about the last 3 games of our group as being ones where you can look at doing things differently. The Vinicius news is massive. There's no getting around it. It might help some of their players, and I think it's notable as well that Bellingham started scoring goals again, and it probably means that now he's going to be operating centrally rather than out wide. Which is probably he's the guy who I'm most concerned about looking at Real Madrid for a multitude of reasons. 1, he's a very, very good footballer. 2, he knows how badly we wanted him. And 3, he hasn't played very many games at any of the big English groups. Because he's been playing for Birmingham, then he's playing for Dortmund, he's playing for Real Madrid. He's never done a big away in one of the big 6, as far as I remember. I don't think Dortmund ever played any of them.
They played City, didn't they? But I he's not at Anfield or anything like that. No.
So he's going to want to put a marker down. And so we're going to have to deal with him. But I do think, just like I said with City, like this is the best chance we've had to go up against Real Madrid in a long time. And I do think that if we are thinking about being deep in the Champions League, and we've already beaten them once this season, and then we see them again in the final, for example, I think it makes a massive difference. I really do.
It's also just great. Like, I think there's a lot to be said for the occasion. I think we get so round up, we've been conditioned, not least through going through league titles, where you feel like you've got to break 90 points, but every game's got to have loads and loads ride on it. I'm just quite looking forward to a game where, at least from our point of view, it's a massive occasion. I'll be desperate to see Liverpool win whilst it's ongoing, but if for whatever reason they don't, or if the game's getting away from you, you can take a step back. Yeah. We cannot, there was no step back to be taken against Southampton. No. And that's a funny thing to say, but that was the truth of it, whereas with this one, it is nice that sort of that aspect of it is no bad thing, I think, and that's part of why they made the changes they made around the tournament. Thank you very much indeed for listening to the Anfield Wrap this week. I hope you've enjoyed it massively. Thank you to Jordan Singleton for doing the images all the way through, if you've chosen that route. Andy Heaton for the sound. You must have chosen that route. You've not done it for the looks, at least for me anyway. A lot to be said for the good looks of Mark Jones, of Mo Stewart, and of Beth Lindop. It has been the Anfield Wrap when Liverpool have gone 8 points clear after 12 games, and the other thing happens soon. You can't keep saying it's early in the season.